Hey, what's up, YouTube family? Hope you guys are having a great day. Hope you guys are blessed today. I hope you guys are, being productive and doing what needs to be done to get you where you want to go. Today, we're going to go ahead and continue in our book, one of my favorite books, one of my gold mines of information, called Indigenous Nations of New Netherlands, New England, New Spain, New France, and the Antilles Island. A complete history, 1500 to 1865 plus. We're going to break down. We're still in, I believe we're going to go back to chapter 7 where we talked about the theater, the African Grove Theater, and minstrel shows and things of that nature. We're going to go back to that. We're going to go ahead and speak on specifically minstrel shows, the rise of minstrel shows within the 5 Points community of Manhattan. The last time I taught out of this book or gave content out of this book, we talk about the land of the blacks of Manhattan and the things that those free people of color went through, and how European immigrants came and snatched up the land that they had, and they were allowed to do it. Matter of fact, they were encouraged to do it by the local government. There's nothing new under the sun. The same things happen today. And we're going to go ahead and go into this chapter called The Rise of Minstrel Shows within the 5 Points community of Manhattan. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, the rise of minstrel shows within the 5 Points community in Manhattan. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the next page. What is a minstrel show? The minstrel show, also called minstrelsy, was an American form of theater developed in the early 19th century. The shows were performed by mostly white actors wearing blackface makeup for the purpose of comically portraying racial stereotypes of African Americans by playing the role of black minstrels. And you can't tell me that stuff is still not going on today. Minstrel shows stereotype blacks as dim-witted, lazy, buffoonish, cowardly, superstitious, and happy-go-lucky. Each show consisted of comic skits, variety acts, dancing, and musical performances that depicted stereotypes of people that considered to be Negroes, colors, and or mulattoes. You are told that blackface minstrelsy was the first unique American form of theater, which is false. Minstrel shows emerged as brief burlesques and comic entr'actes in the early 1830s in the northeastern states, 10 plus years after the closing of the African Grove Theater, as shown previously. And we're going to do, I'm going to do it. Matter of fact, I might do it today. Some content on the African Grove Theater. They were developed into full-fledged art forms in the next decade. By 1848, blackface minstrel shows were considered the national art form by whites, translating formal art such as opera into popular terms for a general audience. The genre has had a lasting legacy and influence and was featured in the British television series The Black and White Minstrel Show with an all-white cast as recently as the mid-1970s. Wow. Generally, as the civil rights movement progressed and gained acceptance, minstrelsy lost popularity, but other stuff came up. The typical minstrel performance followed a 3-act structure. The troupe first danced onto stage, then exchanged wisecracks and sang songs. The second part featured a variety of entertainments, including the pun-filled stump speech. The final act consisted of a slapstick musical plantation skit or a send-up of a popular play. Minstrel songs and sketches featured several stock characters, most popularly the slave and the dandy. These were further divided into sub-archetypes such as the mammy, her counterpart, the old darky, the provocative mulatto wench, and the black soldier. Minstrels claimed that their songs and dances were authentically Negro, although the extent of the genuine black influence remains debated among white historians. Spirituals known as jubilees entered the repertoire in the 1870s, making the first undeniably black music to be used in minstrelsy. During the 1830s and 1840s, at the height of its popularity, it was at the epic end of the American music industry. There were controversial integrationists decried them as falsely showing happy slaves while at the same time making fun of them. Segregationists thought such shows were disrespectful of social norms as they portrayed runaway slaves with sympathy and would undermine slavery. Minstrel shows were popular before slavery was abolished. sufficiently so that Frederick Douglass described blackface performers as the filthy scum of white society, who have stolen from us as a complexion denied them by nature, and wish to make money and pander to the corrupt taste of their white fellow citizens. And I couldn't agree more. Minstrels were exhibited in museums, Wild West shows, and in musical ensembles. Black Americans were also part of traveling medicine shows, which were on the cheaper side of outdoor shows for the paying masses. Such traveling medicine shows also employed a Negro band and minstrels, including both men and women. Museums were set up to appeal to the low-income audience, housing freak shows, wax sculptures, as well as exhibits of exoticism, mingled with magic and necessarily live performance. So-called Black Americans were most often displayed as savages, cannibals, monsters, and what were once called human zoos. For example, Maximo and Bertola, who were two El Salvadorian siblings, being displayed as the Aztec children in the 1850s. Okay, like I said, there's nothing new under the sun. If you want to do black movies or black this or black that, the same thing goes today. There's going to be some pimping, there's going to be some hoeing, there's going to be some drug selling, there's going to be some gang banging. You know, it still hasn't changed at all. They just sugarcoated it a lot more, so it looks a little bit more subtle. But shows like Power, shows such as that, shows like Snowfall. I mean, this stuff is still going on today. Whatever you see, something that's on TV or entertainment, I consider it propaganda because people take that and they attribute it to it being true. When you turn on the TV and you watch a show, what's that show that Terrence Howard had? I forgot what it was called. Pow or I forgot what it's called. And they attribute that to be the true black experience, meaning that in every black family, every black neighborhood, or every black community, this is how they operate. So when you have people that have never come in contact with black people, and this is what they see on TV, as soon as they come in contact with the black person, they automatically assume that what they see on TV is true. And that's what is called propaganda applying to real life circumstances. So, like I said, this stuff still going on today. Let me go ahead and continue on this page because I don't want to get caught up in a rant and I forget what I'm doing. All right. Although white theatrical portrayals of black characters date back to as early as 1604, the character of Othello being traditionally played by an actor in black makeup by white performers, the minstrel show as such has later origins. By the late 1800th century, blackface characters began appearing on the American stage. Usually as servant types, those roles did little more than provide some element of comic relief. As a result, the blackface Sambo, the character came to supplant the tall-tale telling Yankee and frontiersman characters types in popularity, and white actors such as Charles Matthews, George Washington Dixie, and Edwin Forrest began to build reputations as blackface performers. So on the back of, playing or disrespecting the image of black people, someone can build a career. Okay, nice. White female author Constance Rourke even claimed that Forrest's impression was so good he could fool blacks when he mingled with them in the streets. Who's Forrest? Edwin Forrest, March 9, 1806 to December 12, 1872, first-generation white American, was a prominent 19th century American Shakespearean actor. It is said his feud with the British actor William Macready was the cause of the deadly Astor Place riot of 1849. Today you will see many painting of this man's false depiction of fictional Wampanoag chief named Metamoro. When you see pictures of this or paintings that resemble this fought, some holding a rifle, just know this is a false depiction of the Wampanoags, which are historically depicted as what white Americans refer to as today as African American or Black American. Edwin Forrest, as a fictional chief Montemora in 1829, and a play called The Last of the Wampanoags, written by another first-generation white American playwright, John Augustus Stone. Let's continue. So that's a picture of said individual we are talking about. In 1832, Thomas Dartmouth Rice's successful song and dance number, Jump Jim Crow, under his stage name, Jim Crow Rice, brought blackface performance to a new level of prominence. At the height of Rice's success, the Boston Post wrote, "The two most popular characters in the world at the present are Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom and Jump Jim Crow." Rice's Jim Crow character was based on the mimicking of what he believed to be black stereotypes. Like every minstrel show, he was no different. Rice also composed the song Jump Jim Crow that later became popular throughout America. And you know, as we continue to read on into this chapter, this book, I just think about every prominent black entertainer, right? Most, if not all, and how they literally have to go into a stereotype mode or a mode of appealing to most, if not all, stereotypes to be able to stay on the screen. For example, Shannon Sharp, when he was on First Take, when he had the do-rag, when he had the Black and Mild, when he had the Hennessy, that to me was a form of minstralism. That was, to me, was a form of a minstrel show. And I guarantee you he was encouraged to do that. And I just sit and I think, when these actors, because these actors are not stupid, like Shannon Sharp, people like that are not stupid. They know when they're having to go on screen to be degraded and to act in that manner. What comes through their mind when somebody sits them down and say, hey, we want you to go on ESPN First Take. We want you to get this Hennessy. We want you to smoke this black. We want you to do this do-rag. And what goes through your mind? Like, do you say, oh, yeah, I can do that? Like, do you agree with it so much, or do you just do it because it's just something that you have to do? Does that bother you? Like, you know, I wouldn't be able to. Nothing's worth my self-respect, right? And I don't believe anything else is worth me continuing to push a stereotype that needs to go away, and that shouldn't be pushed, and that shouldn't be being performed. You know, let a man be a man. You know, and that's unfortunate that as our men and in our community, we can't just be men. We have to always appeal to what others think about us. So, another rant. Let me get off my soapbox. Let's go to the last page of this book. Or not last page of this book, but the last page of the part of the chapter of this book. During the years of his peak popularity from roughly 1832 to 1844, Rice often encountered sold-out houses, with audiences demanding numerous encores. In 1836, he introduced his blackface performances overseas when he appeared in London, although he and his character were known there by reputation, at least by 1833. Rice not only performed in more than 100 plays, but also created plays of his own, providing himself slight variations on the Jim Crow persona as Cuffino, Hush, 1833, Ginger Blue in Virginia, Mummy, 1835, and Bone Squash Diablo, 1835. Shortly after making his first hit in London, in Old Hush, Rice starred in a more prestigious production, a three-act play at the Adelphi Theatre in London. Moreover, Rice wrote and starred in Othello, 1844. He also played the title character in Uncle Tom's Cabin. Starting in 1854, he played in one of the more prominent and one of the least about abolitionists, Tom shows, loosely based on Harriet Beecher Stowe's book. The Virginia Cupids was an operatic audio and the most popular of the time. It is centered on a song, Cold Black Rose, which predated the playlet. Rice played Cuff, boss of the bootblacks, and he wins the girl, Rose, away from the black dandy Sambo Johnson, a former bootback who made money by winning the lottery. As early as 1840, Rice suffered from a type of paralysis which began to limit his speech and movements, and eventually led to his death on September 9th, 1860. His funeral services were at St. Thomas Church, and he is interred at Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, New York State. A reminiscence of him in New York Times suggests his death was alcohol-related and states that although he had made a considerable fortune in his time, his later years were spent in a liquor saloon and his burial was paid for by the public subscription. Probably had to try to, soothe his conscience from all the, stuff he was doing. In later half of the 19th century, a wooden statue of Rice and his Jim Crow character stood in various New York locations. Of course it did, including outside the Chatham Garden Theater. It was painted and made in 4 pieces, with both arms and the right leg below the knee being separate parts screwed to the trunk. Prior to at least 1871, it had stood on Broadway outside, a well-known resort of actors and showmen. According to an article in New York Times, it had apparently been carved by Rice himself in 1833. Although a different account on the same paper says it had been carved by a celebrated figurehead carver called Whedon, and yet another article attributes its right to Rice's former employer, Charlie Dodge. It had long been used by Rice as an advertising feature and accompanied him on a successful tour of London. By 1838, the term Jim Crow was being used as a collective racial epithet for a so-called colored, a Negro, not as offensive as a Nigger, but similar to coon or darky. The popularity of minstrel shows clearly aided the spread of Jim Crow as a racial slur. The use of the term only lasted half a century. By the end of the 19th century, the words Jim Crow were less likely to be used to diversely describe Black Americans. Today, people might refer to them as actual laws, but the phrase Jim Crow was being used to describe laws and customs which oppressed the people they deemed Negroes and or coloreds. Jim Crow laws were based on the theory of white supremacy and were a reaction to Reconstruction. In the Depression-racked 1890s, racism appealed to whites who feared losing their jobs to Black Americans. Politicians also abused the so-called Negro to win the votes of poor whites, which they still do today. Newspapers fed the bias of white readers by playing up, sometimes even making up, so-called Black crimes. Let's read that again. Let's read that one more time, because I'm sure they're still doing that today. Newspaper fed the bias of white readers by playing up, sometimes even making up, so-called Black crimes. Much of the remnants of these Jim Crow laws still have notable effects which still linger through the communities of the American indigenous nations, invaded and reclassified as Indians, Negroes, colors, mulattoes, Sambos, Creoles, Maroons, Africans, slaves, and just about every name you can think of, all except who they actually are. Aboriginals, or should I say indigenous, to the Americas. So that was a part of a chapter, I believe 7, dealing with minstrel shows. And a lot of what I read, and it's so funny, it's so interesting to read this. I mean, this stuff was in the 18th century, 19th century, and how long the banner has been carried, how much this still applies. It's mind-blowing that these things still apply to what we go through today, the lasting effects of what we go through today. Although it has evolved into different things, it's the same thing. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Now when I hear that, I totally get it. Things have changed so far to where they're still the same. We dress up the things that we still go through, and we think that things are different, all because it's shiny, it looks good, it's more appealing now. We are still in somewhat of a spiritual slavery. The chains aren't on us no more. They're not physical, they're spiritual. They're chains that we can't see, and a lot of times we are chaining ourselves to things that we should be loosed from. So it's just very interesting. It's a little sad, man. It's a little frustrating, to see that, to understand, come to the understanding that nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. It just looks different. You know what I mean? It's just more unseen. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm going to drop some more content here pretty soon as well. Some more interesting stuff that I know you guys will like. I still got some more of that book, Modern Jews and Blacks in the early to modern world. I will read some more of that because there's a lot more that is very interesting that goes into the claims of our community. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. It's your favorite black guy from Nebraska. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also, remember to keep God first in everything you do. And please like, share, and subscribe. All right. I'll see you guys later. Hope you guys have a blessed day.